Welcome to the deep dive. You've probably heard a dog growl, right? Maybe even your own.
Hmm.
Today we're not just brushing it off, we're diving into what those growls really mean.
Exactly. We've got some great material here, excerpts from the growling behaviors of dogs, and our goal is, well, it's pretty simple. Help you understand that a growl isn't just, a step away from a bite.
Right.
It's actually a really crucial piece of communication.
And why should you care? Well, think of this as your express route, kind of, to understanding a key part of dog behavior. We're cutting through the confusion
Yeah.
to give you practical insights, stuff that can build a stronger connection with your dog and head off potential issues.
Okay.
Okay, so why is truly understanding a growl so vital?
Well, what's fascinating here is that a growl is often your dog's early warning system. It's like a little alarm bell going off.
Okay.
It can signal they're feeling fear, anxiety, stress,
Yeah.
sometimes even pain. Recognizing this early communication is just so important because figuring out why they're growling, that's the first step. That's how you prevent things escalating, into a snap or even a bite.
So they're basically saying, hey, I'm not okay with this.
Exactly that. It's their way of trying to avoid a confrontation.
Right. And when we get that, we can respond in a way that actually helps them feel safer.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just theory. It's about, well, better communication with our furry companions. Now, our source gives us some really powerful examples. Let's start with Dory. What can her story teach us?
Ah, Dory. Yeah, her story, she was a Doberman who started growling at strangers around 10 months old. It really highlights the dangers of trying to just punish away communication.
Instead of figuring out the why.
Exactly. Instead of figuring out why she was scared, her owners used electric collars, prong collars, and just telling her off, basically, to stop the growling.
Which, on the surface, might seem like it's working right. The growling stops. Looks like a quick fix.
Precisely. And the training did suppress the growling for a while. But here's the critical thing to understand. Dory's fear of strangers.
The root cause.
The underlying reason for the growling, it wasn't addressed at all, not one bit. Instead, she just learned that if she showed she was uncomfortable, she'd get punished.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the source makes it clear that using punishment to stop a growl, what's called positive punishment, can have some really negative unintended consequences.
Oh, absolutely. The source points out that when you punish a dog for growling, you're essentially like cutting the wire on their warning light. You're silencing their ability to give you that early signal.
And the feelings don't just vanish.
No. These suppressed feelings, the anxieties, they don't just disappear. They can easily resurface, especially if the dog feels threatened again and doesn't have that warning system anymore.
So what happened with Dory?
Well, in Dory's case, her aggression towards strangers came back just 2 months later. But this time she was lunging without any of those initial growls or fearful body language warning.
Wow, that's such a crucial point. By punishing the growl, they basically took away her way of saying, hey, I'm scared, which unfortunately led to much more dangerous behavior. So what's the science behind why punishing a growl is so, well, counterproductive?
The science really comes down to how dogs learn. When you use positive punishment, that means adding something unpleasant, like the collar correction or yelling to stop a behavior like growling. You might get the immediate result, the growl stops.
But you haven't changed the feeling.
Exactly. You haven't changed how the dog feels about the situation that caused the growl in the first place. In fact, the source really highlights that aversive training can actually make dogs more anxious and potentially more aggressive.
Because they link the scary thing with punishment.
Yes. They learn to associate the scary thing, like a stranger approaching, with the unpleasant feeling of the punishment. It's like, if you were afraid of spiders and someone zapped you every time you saw one, would that make you less afraid?
Definitely not. Probably more.
Probably more. It's like taking the warning light off your car's dashboard instead of fixing the engine problem.
Yeah, the light's gone, but the issue's still there.
And it could get much worse. That's why the source emphasizes that growling is normal communication. It's often just a way for a dog to say, I need some space.
So punishing it.
Not recommended. Definitely not.
Okay, now let's tackle this whole idea of dominance. It comes up so often. Our source really challenges the common belief that our relationships with dogs should be based on, them being submissive to us. Can you unpack why that perspective might be outdated or even harmful?
Absolutely. Look, while dogs certainly have social structures and hierarchies within their own groups.
Dog to dog.
Right, dog to dog. Applying a strict, dominant, submissive model to our relationships with them, human to dog, is often inaccurate. and it can really lead to misinterpretations of their behavior. What we often label as dominance-related aggression
Mhm.
is more accurately understood, according to the source, as conflict-related aggression.
Okay, conflict related.
Yeah.
So it's less about the dog trying to be the alpha or the boss of the house.
Not really in the way people often think about it, no. Conflict aggression usually pops up when a dog feels the need to protect something important to them. Could be food, toys, attention, even their favorite resting spot.
Their resources.
Exactly, their resources from being taken away or encroached upon. Now, while this can sometimes involve growling at owners in those specific situations, it doesn't really explain why a dog like Dory would growl at strangers, does it?
No, that's different.
The key thing to remember is that dogs aren't hatching plans to rule the roost based on some human idea of a power struggle. They're reacting. They're reacting to what they perceive as a threat to their well-being or their access to those important resources.
So if it's not about them trying to dominate us, how do dogs learn and, decide how to act?
The source is really clear on this. Dogs respond to consequences. Basically, what gets them good things and what makes bad things go away.
Okay.
And this brings us back to the difference between reinforcement and punishment. We saw how positive punishment, adding something bad, was used with Dory to try and stop the growling.
Right. And the source also mentions negative reinforcement. What's the difference there? It can get a little confusing.
It really can. Okay, so negative reinforcement is about removing something unpleasant to make a behavior more likely to happen again.
Removing something unpleasant.
Yeah, think about teaching a stay. You might apply gentle leash pressure, and the instant the dog holds the stay, you release the pressure.
Okay. The removal of pressure reinforces the staying.
Exactly, but in Dory's case, remember, the growling stopped because something unpleasant, the collar correction or the yelling, was added. That's positive punishment.
Got it. Adding something bad versus taking something bad away. And as we've discussed, adding something unpleasant to stop a growl isn't the best long-term plan. So what is a better approach?
Well, the source strongly advocates for positive reinforcement. Simple as that. Rewarding the behaviors you do want to see.
Like rewarding calm behavior.
Precisely. This creates a positive association and encourages the dog to repeat those good behaviors. So when we're dealing with growling, the goal isn't to silence the growl itself, but to understand why it's happening.
Find the root cause again.
And address that underlying cause using positive methods, like maybe rewarding calm behavior in situations that used to trigger a growl once you've managed the situation safely, of course.
Makes sense. Now, a dog's age and stage of life also play a role here, don't they? The source mentioned something called social maturity. What's that? And how does it connect to growling?
Yes, social maturity. It typically happens between, say, 1 and 2 years old. And it's a really important developmental period for dogs.
Like canine adolescence, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. During this time, they can actually become more sensitive to social situations. Anxieties or even protective instincts might become more pronounced.
Okay.
So if a dog starts growling more during this phase, it's even more crucial that we understand what they're trying to communicate. We definitely don't want to suppress those early warning signs then, because they're a vital part of how the dog is learning to navigate the world as an adult.
That makes sense. It's like their adult personality is still setting, and we don't want to mess up their ability to communicate discomfort or fear. Okay, let's move on to our second case study, Apollo and his interactions with a child. What does Apollo's story teach us about growling in a household with kids?
Apollo's case is a really clear example of resource guarding, but specifically in the context of a child. Apollo would growl, lunge, and even snap when the young child in the home came near him while he was resting, on the floor or the couch.
And the owner's reaction.
The owner's immediate reaction was to yell at Apollo.
Which, based on what we've already talked about, we can probably guess wasn't the most helpful response.
Exactly. The source really emphasizes the importance of managing the environment in situations like this. First and foremost, meaning creating physical barriers like using baby gates or teaching the child really clearly not to approach Apollo when he's resting. It also points to research showing that young kids, especially under 7, are often bitten by dogs they know
Familiar dogs.
during interactions that the child initiates.
And the really crucial point here is that Apollo was giving a warning before he escalated, wasn't he?
Precisely. His growling was a clear signal. I'm uncomfortable with you being this close while I'm trying to rest. The problem wasn't the growl itself.
It was that the warning wasn't heeded.
Exactly. That early warning was ignored or maybe punished, which led to the more serious behaviors like lunging and snapping. The best solution, as the source suggests, is management first. Provide Apollo with a safe haven, a den or crate, where he can relax completely undisturbed by the child.
And punishing Apollo for growling in that situation could have actually made things worse, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Made him associate the child with bad things.
Absolutely. Yelling at Apollo is positive punishment. As we saw with Dory, this could easily increase his anxiety and potentially suppress his growling in the future, making him less likely to warn. And yes, crucially, it could create a negative association between Apollo and the child, which is the last thing you want.
Right.
The source even notes that if you punish a dog while another person is present, like yelling at Apollo when the child is nearby, the dog can sometimes associate that unpleasant feeling with the person who's present, not just your actions.
That's a really important side effect for owners to consider.
Yeah.
What about using a leash in these kinds of situations? Sometimes people think that helps control things.
Well, a leash can be a useful tool for gently guiding a dog away from a situation, like leading them to their safe space. But the source strongly advises against using it for sharp corrections or punishment in these moments.
Why is that?
Similarly, tethering a dog, like tying them up nearby, can actually increase their anxiety and frustration because it completely takes away their ability to move away from something they find stressful. They feel trapped, and trying to force a dog to get used to something they're scared of through repeated unpleasant interactions, that's called forced acclimation, or flooding it often backfires badly. It can actually make them more fearful, sensitizing them.
So again, it boils down to listening to what the dog is telling you with that growl and then changing the environment or the setup to prevent the problem, rather than trying to force the dog to just suck it up.
That's the essence of it, yes. Management and understanding.
Okay, let's move on to Charlie.
Yeah.
He had some issues with resource guarding objects, things like socks and remotes. This feels like a pretty common challenge for a lot of dog owners.
Oh, it is indeed. Very common. Charlie, described as a young golden retriever poodle mix, would get really tense, stiffen up, and growl if his owner came near him when he had food, treats, or even things he'd stolen like socks or the TV remote.
And the owner's approach, let me guess, confrontational.
You guessed it. The owner's usual approach was to try and corner Charlie, maybe grab for the item, basically force the issue to get the forbidden object back.
That sounds like a recipe for escalating things pretty quickly.
Exactly. The source explains that repeatedly confronting a dog like this when they have something they value can lead to something called sensitization.
Sensitization meaning?
Think of it like this. Every time Charlie feels threatened about losing his treasure, his reaction gets a little bit stronger, a little faster, a little more intense. His guard goes up higher each time. This increases the risk of a bite significantly over time.
So instead of trying to physically wrestle the sock away, what does the source recommend for owners like Charlie's?
The key recommendation is simple but effective. Trade up. Offer a high-value treat in exchange. So instead of approaching Charlie like you're going to take something by force, you approach calmly, maybe stop at a safe distance, and offer something even better in exchange for whatever Charlie has.
Now I can almost hear some owners thinking, but doesn't that just teach the dog that stealing socks gets them yummy treats? Does the source address that concern?
It does, and it's a valid concern from an owner's perspective. The source points out that while it might seem like you're rewarding the stealing, what you're actually doing, and this is crucial, is changing Charlie's entire association with you approaching him when he has something valuable.
Ah, so it's not about the sock, it's about your approach.
Exactly. Instead of expecting a confrontation, a fight, he starts to anticipate a positive interaction. Oh, human approaches when I have this cool thing and I get an awesome treat. Over time, this can actually decrease his need to guard the object so fiercely because the interaction becomes positive, not threatening.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about changing the dog's perception of the whole interaction from negative, scary to positive and rewarding. Now, the source also briefly mentions some other behavioral terms: habituation, learned helplessness, desensitization, counter-conditioning. Charlie's owner wasn't using these, but can you give us just a quick idea of what they are? They seem relevant to understanding dog behavior more broadly.
Absolutely. They're important concepts in behavior modification. So habituation is basically just getting used to something neutral through repeated exposure, like a dog eventually ignoring traffic noise outside.
Okay.
Learned helplessness is, sadly, what can happen if a dog is repeatedly exposed to stressful situations they can't control or escape. They might eventually just shut down and stop trying to respond. It's not a good state.
Yeah.
Desensitization is a very careful process. It involves gradually exposing a dog to something they're scared of, but at such a low intensity, maybe far away or very brief, that it doesn't trigger their fear response. You slowly increase the intensity as they stay calm.
And counter conditioning.
Counter-conditioning often goes hand in hand with desensitization. It's about actively changing the dog's emotional response by pairing the scary thing, at that low, non-scary level, with something they absolutely love, like super high-value treats or a favorite game. You're creating a new positive association. Oh, seeing that thing predicts yummy cheese.
Gotcha. So these are all much more humane and effective ways to address behavioral issues compared to just punishing the outward sign like a growl.
Precisely. They focus on changing the underlying emotion and association.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about Roscoe. His growling seemed different. It appeared suddenly in a very specific situation. What did we learn from Roscoe's experience?
Roscoe's case is really important. He was an older dog who suddenly started growling when his owner touched him on his back end, his pelvic area, even though he used to enjoy being petted there.
And there were other signs.
Yeah, his owner had also noticed he was slowing down on walks, seemed a bit stiff, maybe resisting stares. This combination, the new onset of growling in an older dog, especially linked to being touched in a specific spot, plus other signs of aging or discomfort, that's a massive red flag.
Red flag
For
thought.
potential pain or an underlying medical issue.
So in Roscoe's case, the growling wasn't really a behavioral problem in the usual sense.
Exactly right. Roscoe was ultimately diagnosed with pain-related aggression. The growling was his only way of communicating, hey, that hurts when you touch me there.
That's vital.
And the source distinguishes this really well. They noted Roscoe didn't show other fearful body language. The growling wasn't triggered by strangers, ruling out fear or protective aggression. It wasn't playful, and he didn't show signs of generalized anxiety. It was specific to that touch.
So Roscoe's story is a huge reminder, isn't it?
A huge one. A sudden change in a dog's behavior, especially growling related to touch, and especially in an older dog, should always, always prompt a vet visit first thing. Rule out medical causes before you even think about behavior modification.
That's such an important takeaway. A growl isn't always about training or environment. It can be a direct sign that your dog is physically uncomfortable or in pain. Okay, finally, let's look at Bruce and his growling during playtime. This is another situation that can sometimes worry dog owners, right?
Yeah.
Seeing teeth and hearing growls during fun.
Definitely. Bruce, described as a young pit bull terrier, would often growl quite a bit while playing tug of war, both with his owner and with his dog housemate. But importantly, his body language told a completely different story. It was very loose, relaxed, and clearly playful, lots of play bows, a big wiggly tail wag, taking breaks voluntarily, and even happily rolling onto his back during play with his housemate. Classic play behavior.
So it's not just the sound itself, it's the whole picture, the context, the body language.
Absolutely. You have to read the whole dog. The source emphasizes that growling can be a perfectly normal, even enthusiastic part of play for many dogs.
Like excited noises.
Exactly. Bruce's relaxed body language and his ability to engage in that give-and-take play, even switching roles from winner to loser and back with his housemate, showed this wasn't about dominance. It clearly wasn't fear. The body language was the opposite, and it wasn't predatory behavior either.
How do they rule that out?
Well, the source points out that true predatory behavior, like hunting, is usually characterized by silent stalking, chasing, and a quick grab bite, not typically accompanied by loud growling during interaction like tug. Bruce's growling was simply a vocal expression of his high arousal, his excitement, and his enjoyment of the game. Good social skills, actually.
It really sounds like putting all the pieces together, the context, the dog's body language, their history, the specific situation is absolutely crucial for understanding what any particular growl really means.
Precisely. Growling is a form of communication. It's a language, in a way. And like any language, we need to pay attention to the nuances, the context, the tone, to really understand the message being sent.
So let's quickly recap the big points. We've learned that growling is often an early warning signal, right? And understanding why a dog is growling is absolutely key.
Crucial.
We should definitely avoid punishing growls, because that can silence important communication and potentially lead to much more serious issues down the line.
Yes, suppresses the mourning.
We've seen how growling can be linked to all sorts of things: resource guarding, fear, anxiety, pain, and even just normal, healthy, playful interaction.
The whole spectrum of reasons.
And our response really needs to be tailored to that specific situation and the underlying cause.
And the real aha moment here, I think, for listeners is reframing how we see growling. Instead of automatically thinking threat or bad dog, we should be thinking information.
Information, I like that.
Our dog is trying to tell us something important about how they're feeling or what they need.
That's a really powerful shift in mindset, isn't it? So for you listening, here's something to maybe chew on. Think back to a time recently when a dog growled. Could have been your own, a friend's dog, one you met on a walk. Based on everything we've just discussed,
Yeah.
what might that dog have actually been trying to communicate? And knowing what you know now, how might you approach a similar situation differently in the future? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.